Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast. My name is Dan Murphy, and with me always is Derek Brissett and Stu Hardy. And before we get started, we first want to offer our condolences to the Legg family from Kingston, Ontario. Unfortunately, Scotty Legg, who's 16 years old, big fan of rugby. His parents said that rugby was his life. Unfortunately, passed away in a car accident. He played, in Kingston with the Panthers and also with the Eastern Ontario Rugby Union team out of Ottawa. So we want to offer our condolences to the Legg family and also to his teammates with the Panthers and the Eastern Ontario team. So uh, we can't really say a lot. When a life like this is taken so young, we just hope that everyone can find peace. So God rest your soul, Scotty. Gentlemen, we've got a few things to talk about. We've had a couple little tournaments start and finish in the last week or so, and we've had a little bit of news from the Toronto Arrows. And I think the first thing that we'll start with is with the Arrows. So Rugby Ontario, and the Toronto Arrows have partnered to launch a junior academy. So from their press release, they say it's a joint created by the provincial sports governing body and Canada's first professional rugby union team. The non-residential Ontario Blues Junior Arrows Academy will act as an extension of Rugby Ontario's Winter Skills Academy, where selected under 15 to under 18 athletes will receive an additional 26 sessions, 13 tactical, and then 13 strength and conditioning from October to April. So what the Arrows are essentially trying to do is they're trying to, fill in that gap where rugby's not being played. And, we just had a long layoff of no rugby. So the Arrows are kind of finding a little niche to get their name out there and start an academy. Now, my first question to you guys is this where the Arrows are putting money where their mouths are? They have talked a lot when talked about their business plan is that they wanted to focus on the grassroots. And unfortunately, they originally had to start building their own team. They had to build the Arrows. They had to develop their own, business. So this is really their first big foray into grassroots rugby programs other than sponsoring, OFSA and other events like that. So how do you guys feel about this?
Well, I think first of all, I think like they've been doing a lot of grassroots stuff. I mean, maybe they haven't had this necessarily like an academy like this before, but they have been doing like, as when we interviewed Andrew Ferguson, part of the reason we scheduled the interview at that time was because he said he had to come back from an Oakville Crusaders practice that he was running. So like the Arrows have been doing a ton of grassroots level stuff. I think
For sure. And this is just their first, like,
it's
we
an
are running
academy.
this.
Yeah. Um,
Exactly. They've been very active in going out into the rugby community and having their players coach and being presence in events and stuff like that. Like the TRIF's rugby in the city event. They were there for that and they had some Arrows playing in that. But this is really their first like, all right, we're working on this with Rugby Ontario. This is going to have our fingerprints all over it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing to see, man. I think the Arrows, as well as the Free Jacks or Utah or NOLA or Rugby ATL or any of the other San Diego as well. There's been a lot, and Houston, can't forget Houston Rugby HTX to follow along with the three coded city rugby names that have been sprawling up. But like there's a lot of MLR teams that are starting to really kind of dive into the academy programs. Obviously, we saw the Free Jacks a couple of weeks ago announced they were taking a deep dive into that with their 13 programs stretched across the entirety of the New England region. I think it's one of the things that MLR teams in general, and like not just the Arrows, have to really do is they have to start, you know, identifying the talents of the kids that have the potential to become elite talents in North American rugby, trying to identify them at an earlier age and figure out, where they can fit into that high performance environment. And I think, when we've been talking to a lot of the Arrows players and stuff, it's like, there are some of those guys that, played like a high level of hockey or something like that as well. And, they when you look at other sports in our country, especially hockey, it's like if you have those aspirations, you have a clear like, I have to do this. I have to play, in the GTHL. I have to play, AAA. I have to play, then I can get drafted and then I can play in the OHL and then I can play, in the AHL and then I can play in the NHL or just skip the AHL or whatever. You have that path that all the players can see. And I think right now, like the key thing is for Rugby Ontario, the Toronto Arrows, and then any of the other American teams, though, is also you got to show the kids that path, right? Because it's still a new sport and be like, hey, man, like there's a future for you to play professional rugby. And I mean, you can kind of even look like they're bringing back, one of the coaches that was announced for the Central team is Brett Bukaboom. So it's like you kind of like you're bringing in like capped players to help coach these kids as well. And then obviously they have like Corey Hector heading it up on the Arrows side, Sean Medeiros heading it up on the Ontario Blues or on the Rugby Ontario side. So it's like you get like those great rugby minds that can actually, aid that development. And I think, you just have to put some of these kids don't like. I wish there was something like an Arrows Rugby Academy, like when I was in high school playing rugby, because like that would have been awesome to have, but like we didn't have it. And I like that's what I think. I honestly like I think that's great that you have this group of kids all around 16ish years old that are getting this opportunity to learn from some of the best coaches in the province. And like some of those guys are capped players that have played. I'm assuming, with the Toronto Arrows, man, get some of the Arrows players out to these training sessions. Having it divided in the East, Central, West is also makes it more convenient for the players themselves to get to those training sessions.
Sure.
It's kind of similar to, in a way, it's kind of similar to what New England did, right? Where it's like you can kind of like regionalize all the training groups and stuff. And then, I mean, in a post COVID world, maybe you can figure out ways to kind of maybe bring the like if you keep doing this, maybe there's a way to like bring them together and we can do like within the Arrows Blues Academy you can kind of go like, oh, let's have an East versus Central game or a Central versus West game or West versus East kind of things. And you can maybe like do a weekend or something where the Arrows Academy teams can maybe like play each other to some extent, although the list of players, I'm not sure exactly if that would work mathematically, based on how many players are in each regional group.
Yeah,
But like,
the East is a little smaller than the
yeah,
other two, but
as
yeah,
as
I
it
get your point.
would be geographically. But like, maybe there is the opportunities that they can come in and they can play a game like in front of like say Chris Silverthorne or something can come and like help scout it and stuff. I think it also too, it's like realistically, how many, sorry, Dad, can you correct me, how many players were invited to this academy? Do you have that number in front of you?
41 athletes representing 15 Ontario
All right,
clubs.
cool. So like if you're looking at some of these kids, right, you can bring in like the Arrows coaches and it's like here's so like 41 of some of the best young rugby players in Ontario. Let's go get a look at them and scout them, and you can hopefully put them through that pathway and bring them up and eventually they could become Toronto Arrows. So it's brilliant. I mean, I'm all for any club teams. I'm all for any MLR teams creating academy programs, especially the ones that target not just like some of those guys that just couldn't quite crack the full MLR roster, but especially like the youth players, the high school age group that are going to be the guys that can be on your roster in maybe 5 to 10 years, or I guess well, specifically for high school, hopefully about maybe yeah, 5 to 10. Let's go with that.
Now, Stu, my question to you is, what can a strong academy system do for a team? What are the dividends that the Arrows could see down the line from setting up a strong academy system?
I think it's ultimately going to give options for the Arrows because that's if coaches say that if you ever want a headache, you want to have a selection headache because you've got so many great players available to choose from. I also want to say it's even if all 41 of these players go through the junior academy into the senior academy that's already in place, they won't all be selected for the Arrows just because 41 doesn't fit into a match day 15. And as well, that there may be other teams in MLR or maybe even across the Atlantic looking at the development process and being able to pick out the players that they need in their squad. But having that continual growth and communication through the academy setup from the juniors into the seniors and into the Arrows itself. It helps prepare the players towards that professional environment, and it also familiarizes these junior academy players with the playing style, and that would play into not only the Arrows play style, but would benefit the Arrows in terms of on-field performance and off-field training and progression.
And we kind of have seen it this off season that the Arrows have kind of gone out and filled spots of need with players from outside Canada and outside of Ontario. We have a very, very strong South American contingent. And the nice thing with this academy is that, in 10 years, if MLR is still around, and hopefully, knock on wood, it still is, this academy can help fill those needs. They can start saying now, it's like, okay, we know that there's a deficit in, fullbacks and fly halves. Let's start really developing some guys that we think that can fit that mold now. So it'll be interesting to see how this all kind of works out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that I think will be interesting to see as we get, as we dive more into the future of MLR, like maybe 5 to 10 years, we are seeing that a lot of the teams, as we said, have started to do these academy programs, and there are kids that are like, 14, 15, 16 years old. I think the Free Jacks even go even younger to try to get like some of the younger kids into their programs and stuff too, or at least just playing rugby and hopefully having a ton of fun while they're doing it. But I think the interesting thing is going to be is Stu kind of touched on, right? Like in Europe, all the pro rugby teams and most of the leagues there, it's like they don't do a draft, right? So everybody has academies. In North America, all the 5 major sports leagues, they all do drafts. So nobody, the NHL doesn't own, there's no academy teams, right? There's a minor league system, but there's no academy teams. So there's no way to you're not identifying a 16-year-old kid to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, right? They're playing in the OHL, and then eventually they get drafted when they're 18. So I'm kind of very curious with the MLR doing the draft, and assuming in the future, let's make the assumption that Canadian players are also going to be eligible to be in the draft, hopefully next year, but if not, I hope sometimes in the future. I'm curious to see how that dynamic is going to work.
Yeah.
With teams setting up academies in a league that's also doing a draft. And I think because I think it's going to be interesting, because it's what if there's a scenario where you have a player that's like, hey, has been going to say the Free Jacks Academy since he was 14 years old. He gets all the way up. He goes to school somewhere. He's playing in school that makes him eligible for the draft, and then he gets drafted by Rooney. Right. And it's
I think that MLR will then have to put if they are going to continue with the draft,
it's going to be interesting.
They're going to need to have every team have an academy system, so that way it's consistent, right? So if they're going to do the draft and I can draft from any academy, I'm going to need, the league will want to have everyone to have an academy, and and then maybe one academy gets pilfered a little bit, and they have to adapt a different way. It's the same argument about getting kids from Ontario. Anybody can draft an OHL kid or a Q kid if they're looking for a forward.
The difference though is the Toronto Arrows own their academy, right? None of the NHL teams own an OHL team, right? So it's they're not the property of it. It's
so you make it that
yeah. So but that would literally
designate somebody like the expansion drafts, right? You have to designate a certain amount of people that you want to protect.
I think you're kind of I feel like you're kind of missing the key difference though, because in hockey or whatever, the OHL players aren't owned by the NHL. The NHL teams aren't putting in any resources into their development. Whereas in MLR, if you're building these academies up, you're directly developing that player. And then if that player were to go to school, as many players should, because you're not necessarily making enough money out of rugby, and you need that backup plan. So these guys should be going to school and then therefore going into that draft system. But it's okay, so now say you've gone through the Arrows Academy till you're 18 or whatever. You kind of went to school. The Arrows put all that money and that time into investing with you. You go to school, now you're drafted by a different team, but the Arrows were the team that kind of developed you. And is that going to cause like some sort of conflict? Do they need to kind of figure out some sort of rules for that? Because like what I'm trying to get at is like in Europe, it's straight up academy system. Or in North America, most of the leagues do a draft. Right now, the MLR looks like they're kind of building towards some sort of combination of the two.
Right.
And how is that going to work together? Brendan Sparks of the Utah Warriors was on MLR Kickoff earlier this week. He had some thoughts on how this is going to, like, although it doesn't sound like there was necessarily any like formal rules discussions yet, but he had some thoughts on how that may work. So those are pretty interesting. So I would recommend going to check those out if you haven't heard them yet. His general kind of stance was he doesn't want to do anything that would prevent a player from playing professional rugby. So, I mean, you probably would end up with teams going, but it would be interesting to see if there would be like some sort of like compensation, like maybe if you draft, it's like maybe there's like okay, sweet. If you draft a guy from our academy, here's $5,000 of cap space as like your compensation or something. Because I don't know.
Yeah, there's lots of ways. Like again, like some leagues do, the player chooses certain teams that they're allowed to get drafted by, which like, can make like partnerships between different teams kind of work out. Like, there's a lot of different ways that this works. But I agree. My point was saying that MLR will then, if they're going to do both, will need to set a kind of an academy standard.
Yeah, like
all the league teams will have to follow, because you don't want Toronto, the Arrows to be dumping in a whole bunch of money and having their team tour and train and play a bunch of meaningful games, and then like the Guillotines having their team meet once a month for like a scrimmage, So I think that's gonna be.
I think you want the investment and stuff. Obviously, I think if you going forward, it's going to be interesting, because it's like, I feel like say in 15 to 20 years, this league like really takes off and stuff. And some of the players that you can identify at a younger age start becoming like really talented players. It's like, do you want to see those guys walk because they have to enter the draft after going through your academy? So like, I don't know. It's an interesting thing, right? Like you don't usually see, like, I can't think of another league that has like an academy system and a draft. Stu, anything? Academies.
So doesn't MLS have an academy program?
I think. Well, I think they have an academy program.
TFC has an academy program, does it not?
Do they do a draft though?
Draft is a very North American thing. So yeah.
So doesn't MLS have an academy?
Let me just have a quick check.
So my other question about this is, what do you guys prefer?
Well, I'm being from the UK, only really know like the academy system, and then teams just signing whoever they want whenever they want, and that's how you can get some big name signs. So, for example, it would have, if we were to put this with the Arrows in context, do you think we would have been able to sign Tukale if we would have been mandated to the draft system? And then you can have these big names come in that are going to be there for your team, that aren't going to be going away on international duty. But then again, this is also a sport that is now, with its target audience being North American, and I think for a lot of fans to have a draft in place just builds on that familiarity with the big four sports in North America.
Like, I mean, LeBron James wasn't part, was able to sign with the Lakers, and he wasn't part of their academy program. Like, big star signings still happen in draft leagues. Like, that's still very common. But I honestly prefer the academy side of it. I think that it develops a lot more of a like regional love with the fans, because they know that like the majority of their team is going to come from the area that they grew up in, and the players kind of take a little bit more of it to heart, saying that I grew up in Ontario. I'm going to start my career with Toronto, and if greener pastures come after, then maybe they move on, and it happens. Like, you see it in rugby, people leave their team. That's just part of life. Sometimes people have deeper pockets somewhere else, but I think that it's a really cool. I mean, hockey used to be that way. The Toronto Marlboros used to be a feeder system up, and so did the Kingston Frontenacs. Like, that used to be the way it was. But
way back in the original 6 era.
yeah, well, you know what? I've been watching a lot of Murdoch mysteries, so that's where my brain's at right now.
Yeah, but yeah, so apparently,
so that's just my personal
Yeah.
preference. I like that.
On checking quickly, so it does look like, I mean, I don't know anything about soccer, do not watch it at all, but it looks like the MLS does have some sort of academy and draft thing, so that's interesting. But
so there you go. So it is something that's out there. So
I don't know how it actually works though, because I just googled it quickly on my phone. But I think, like, I think ultimately, like, I don't know, as a North American sports fan, I'm used to the draft, right? And so it's like that's something that I've come to expect. I fully expect to see players go, elsewhere, wherever they were trained. MLR, maybe it's a little bit different because obviously guys, aren't necessarily making enough money. So it's like the younger players, it's like you have those considerations and things like that. But
yeah, and that's the thing too, is we might not
maybe,
ever get to that point, right? Where players are going to want to make those big moves across the country just because of salaries.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe ultimately, like, the combination is going to be the thing that ultimately works. I'm curious to see how it evolves, is I guess the point that I'm kind of overall trying to make here. I'm curious to see how that kind of evolves and what they end up doing. If there is going to be any sort of rules for that, or if they kind of, because I guess, I mean, I don't know, looking at, I guess the MLS does it. So the Major League Rugby has been following the MLS formula to a T. So, I guess if it works, it works. I'm curious to see the evolution of it, because the combination of a draft and an academy is something that is a little on the more unusual side, right? So it's kind of like the hybrid system of what we're used to in North America, or what Stu would be used to in Europe.
So we have mentioned the Free Jacks Academy program already today, and we've mentioned them in the past. We kind of went down what our favorite teams were from their
they're selling merch now, by the way. You can pick up the Night Watch shirt on the Free Jacks website now.
Derek, and like feverish frenzy, sent us multiple messages about it, and he's very excited about it.
The Free Jacks shop is cool, man. They got some stuff on there.
So gentlemen, what I want to do is have a little fun with this whole new academy program. Is I want you guys to name some team names for the West, the Central, and the East. And I'm going to start with Stu.
All right, then. Well, I know there are like 3 designations, but I've just come up with 3 names not based on geography. I looked at the coat of arms of Ontario to get a few ideas. One team had to include like maple leaf at some description. So one team's called.
I think that might be copyrighted in Southern Ontario, though.
Yeah,
there might be. I don't know if the Toronto Maple Leafs is going to fly as the name of a rugby team.
No. Okay, so the first name I have is the Golden Maples, because on the
it's a gold leaf on the flag.
Golden maple leaf.
All right.
Also on the coat of arms is a black bear. So the Black Bears, I think, would be a pretty good team name. Just take the logo for Bristol Bears, and instead of blue, have black. And you're sorted.
There's other bear logos. We don't have to steal from another rugby
copyright
team.
infringement aside.
Stu's like, call the team the Central Bears, and we'll just take like that spoke C, make it orange, put it on a blue background. We'll look nothing like Chicago. Don't worry, guys.
And then I know there's like stags and does and deer on the red, but I went with another animal, probably the most fearsome animal in all of the Great White North. So my final team name is the Fighting Geese.
Ooh.
All right.
I like that.
That's fun. That sounds.
Yeah, I did want to go along like the River Punks kind of line and have something called like the Rail Jerks or something, but no. Those are the 3 names I'm going with: Golden Maples, Black Bears, Fighting Geese.
All right. I don't know. Fighting Geese, I think, is the best one of that group there. I think that's the clear winner out of what Stu has suggested. Okay, so I kind of went with on my idea. So the Toronto Arrows, as we've discussed, are named after the Avro arrow the aircraft that was developed here in Southern Ontario by Avro. And there's a whole like political controversy about how the government didn't let it go through, but it was supposed to be one of like the best fighter jets in the world. So you can kind of go read up on that. Super interesting plane history there. So for that reason, though,
Super interesting.
It is, man. Go dive into it, man. There's some really like all the like the government kind of hiding in. It was a super controversial decision. Not hiding.
Listen, I'm sure I'll find it on an episode of Murdoch Mysteries, and then I'll catch up with you.
I'm sure. Well, isn't that showing like the 1800s though?
No, it's currently like turn of the century, so I'm at the 1900s.
Okay, so cool. So you got like 40 years to go before you even see this. So
yeah, I'm sure
at least 50 years to go. All right. But either way, so I kind of went with the Avro Arrow was the most famous plane that Avro made. So I went with, if you're going to call like the academy teams, I went with their Avro's other planes as the names of the teams. So we would have they're not bad, man. The Canucks. The Canucks would be one.
Yeah,
the Canucks,
yeah.
They had an Avro Canuck. There was another one called the Avro Jetliner, which is kind of it's what they named it. That's a literal description of the plane, I think. There was also the what they kind of built in collaboration with the UK division of Avro. There was also called the Avro Lancaster. So you can do that. And then the original name of Avro Canada before they kind of merged with that UK division because of Canada, British, obviously the Allies and the Commonwealth and all that World War II history and stuff there. So they were actually used to be called Victory, like Victory Airlines. So I think you could call one team the Victory. The Free Jacks had a team called the Champs. So I mean, I think that kind of goes with that theme there. So I would kind of go with that. There was also one plane that they just called the Advanced Fighter. So I feel like the Advanced Fighters, maybe we can go with that. But I feel like the best options here, I think, to me, are the Canucks Jetliner. Canuck, maybe you can shorten that. Canucks do the Jets, call it the Jets, maybe shorten Jetliner. Canucks, Jets, Lancasters. That's what I would do.
So we're just two out of the 3 teams are NHL
I just thought
teams.
of that. Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, exactly. Well, hey, I mean, they're all like the Jets are literally named after planes. So
yeah, it's hard because there's also the New York Jets. So it's like there's a few Jets out there.
Call a team the Avros. I guess that's an option too. That's
I like. That is my favorite one. The Avros. I like that.
There we go. We'll do the Avros. We'll do the Air Canada team. I don't know. Go with I'm going with airplane. That was that was my idea. Maybe it was half-hearted.
So I'm going geographically. So from the west, I said the Golden Shoes, because most of those teams are in the Golden Horseshoe.
Golden Horseshoe, okay.
Okay. Central, I'm calling them the Central Fishers. Like not like fishermen. I'm talking like the fisher, like the weasel that like terrorizes farms in Central Ontario. They're awful, then they're terrifying. So that's what I want in a team. And then in the east, they're the Eastern Stags. That one it wasn't as creative as the other two, but that's what I got.
Hey, Bill Webb, if you're listening to this, don't hire us to do marketing for your franchise.
The Fishers. I'm proud of the Fishers.
Save everybody. The Fighting Geese.
The Fighting, you know what? The Fishers, though, they're pretty menacing. You could do really cool, like Weasel, like kind of like the Jackal from like Dallas. I think that could be really good.
Or we can go with like we can go with like the archery. We could call it like go archery, do like the Hawkeyes, Green Arrows, and what's another arrow name? The Archers.
The Robin Hoods.
The Robin. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. No,
all right, Hoods. We're moving on from this debacle, which I thought was a good idea earlier in the day. So MLR also released a 5-ish minute video, and they called it the State of the League video. George Killebrew kind of sat down in front of a camera and talked about all the things that have kind of happened in the first 2.5 years of MLR, and also what has happened since he took over. And he mentioned the TV deals. He mentioned kind of the big kind of stopping points of what have happened in the league, and then his kind of goals for the future. So my first question, guys, is did fans really learn anything of substance from this, or was it just Killebrew kind of puffing his chest about the things that have happened in the league so far?
I think it's there's very little in terms of substance to talk about. He does talk about the growth of MLR from its first season to its fourth season. So it started with 7 teams. Now we're about to begin the fourth season with 13, so nearly double the growth since when it started. He also talks about the potential of how MLR could benefit North American rugby should a World Cup come in 2027 or 2031, saying that MLR would be anywhere between 10 to 14 years old, and compares that with soccer, in that when the first World Cup came to the United States, there wasn't a professional league in place, similar to MLS is now, or MLR would be should the United States or Canada host a Rugby World Cup. He also focuses on the word entertainment a lot. Now, when I say sports entertainment, I don't know about you guys, but I definitely think of like WWE and pro wrestling and things like that.
This is exactly where my brain darts. Darts,
But-
I really kind of put into that
Hey.
sports entertainment. I'm not knocking it. If darts are on, sometimes I'll watch it because I am fascinated by how people go and watch darts live. But that is very much a sports entertainment event.
Well, this is my point. If to go back to WWE, is that it's very. I'd like to also compare with like the NFL as well, because both have a signature showpiece to highlight the emphasis of their multi-billion-dollar corporations. They both develop narratives about the participants in question. Obviously, for WWE, it's superstars, and for the NFL, it's the AFC and NFC champions. I think.
Yeah, you got it.
Yep.
You got it.
You're on a roll, Stu. Woo!
Got the initials right. But they are both also feature musical showpieces to break up the action and to attract fans who aren't necessarily wrestling or football fans to watch and pay for their product. Both set huge TV record figures. So I looked it up, and of the top 30 most watched TV events in US history, 29 of them are Super Bowls. And since 2010, all but one Super Bowl has had over 100 million domestic viewers.
What's the one TV event that
I was going to say that was my exact
Super Bowl
question.
or WrestleMania?
The one that passed is the finale of MASH.
Wow, that's true, right?
Interesting.
So
I have never watched a single episode of that show, but I heard it was massive.
For shame.
Yeah,
I love MASH.
But the point
I know nothing. Go on, Stu. I know nothing about MASH. I don't contribute to this conversation.
If the MLR could even get 1% viewership from the most recent Super Bowl final, that would still be over 1 million viewers in the US alone. And that would still be double the 2019 final. So when George is talking about
a lot of people watch the Super Bowl.
Lots of people watch the Super Bowl, and a lot of people watch WrestleMania, and both of them can neither be fans of football and they don't have to be fans of wrestling, but they know what that event is, and people will tune in and watch it just to be like, hey, it's on, let's watch. And if you can develop a following behind MLR, even to, like I said, 1% of that extent, then you have like 1 million people watching. So when George is talking about entertainment, he's talking about, the fan experience at these events, or the experience you get from watching on television. And because he also talked about the growth of TV audiences in MLR, and that's how they started with CBS Sport Network and have now got ESPN Plus and Fox Sports 2, and in Canada TSN. So there is little substance in this video, because obviously I guess that if this year's season had happened, he would have been able to talk about like, oh, we've had this amount of growth for 2020. Obviously he can't do that. So what he is talking about is something that can be built upon, and it does seem to be that the like 10-year plan or 15-year plan is that when, not if, when a Rugby World Cup comes to North America, Major League Rugby is going to be playing a key part in helping develop talent, helping develop the audience, and helping promote the sport in North America.
And you know what? I don't even think we need to look outside of rugby to talk about a fan experience that brought in a lot of fans. Like, look at the last Canada Sevens tournament in Vancouver. You know, they had at one of the days they had almost 40,000 fans there. Yeah. Like, that's a great example of it was a fun, entertaining product that I can't imagine that there was 40,000 avid rugby fans at that. There had to have been some of them that were just there to just see the event, right? That is what MLR needs to tap into in terms of a fun event. It's something that's got a little bit of everything. There's people dressed up in costumes, you know, that is a fun party. And I know a sevens tournament is very different. It's able to be fast and quick, and, you know, different things are happening, but like there is a want for rugby. It just, they need to figure out how to tap into that.
Yeah, I think obviously what you guys have both said, like the fan experience, and Killebrew definitely hit on it, is probably the most important thing. And I think too, though, it's like, I completely agree with what you guys are saying on how it's, you know, it's key to bring in. I
feel like there's a butt coming.
Oh, there's actually no butt coming. There's actually an and coming though. I think I completely agree with what you guys are saying on that. I also would like to add to it, though, in saying that it is also a key thing to have people that are already rugby fans still need to have fun at these games, right? So you still need to do that. And I think, you know, it's professional sports, right? So no matter what happens, you kind of, and I know a lot of teams are going to rely on a little bit of that hardcore rugby fan base, and they have to bring their friends right now. And what I am getting at here is like those fans also still kind of have to have fun, though, like the diehard rugby fans. And at the end of the day, in Major League Rugby, every year, no matter what happens, there's going to be one team that's the champion, and there's going to be one team that finishes last. The thing with the league, though, is it's like all 13 or however many we grow to, all those teams still have to sell tickets. No matter if you're first or if you're last, you still have to sell tickets. And like, you want to do that too. It's like to attract that diehard rugby fan as well. It's like you got to play like a fun brand of rugby and stuff. And fun brands of rugby can be, you know, subjective depending on which fan you're talking to. But like at the end of the day, it's like you need to make sure that like diehard fans are having fun and people are having fun, but you also need to make sure that if you are on, say the Austin Gilgronis last year, or the Austin Elite last year, right? They were 0-16. They're terrible. But ultimately, at the end of the day, though, it's like you want to still have fans at your games, even if you're terrible. Right. So it's like you have to do something to make those fans have a good time, regardless of the actual result of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the ultimate goal for any sports franchise is like, no matter what the scoreboard says at the end of the 80 minutes, everybody in that arena should have had a blast at it. Right. And like, if you have that diehard rugby fan that it's like, there's nothing in the stadium to keep them like, you know, entertained or enjoyed or whatever, and the team loses, they might leave like upset, like, oh, we played like junk today.
Yeah, and I think sorry Derek, I think that MLR has the benefit of there isn't a solid like 20 years of heartache in fans yet.
No, for sure.
That they don't care that they're not like that they're gonna see a loss.
But that's
I think you're still gonna have people come and say, oh, well, we lost, but the other team played well, as you know, like, right. We haven't built that point of like the Ottawa Senators or the Maple Leafs. Like, if they have a horrible season, fans aren't going to go because they're like, oh, we've seen this before, you know?
Yeah. Well, unless you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then you're infallible and you can sell at a barn no matter what. But
no, listen, a couple years ago, the year before Austin Matthews got drafted, they had a couple of games where they did not they had like sellouts.
2 or 3 out of the 41 home games in that season.
Comparison to what they normally do, that was a huge disappointment.
And then they signed Austin Matthews and haven't not had a sold out since. The Leafs are a different, and even at that was at the end of 10 years of like not making the playoffs either.
Poor comparison. That's on comparison.
me. That's horrendous comparison. But I think ultimately though, like even like those diehard rugby fans, so like if the team is bad, are you more or less likely to ask your friends to come out? If the team is bad and the fan experience isn't very good. But if the team is bad, but you can still guarantee that your non-rugby fan friends will have a good time, you're more than likely to bring them out.
For sure.
Right. So I think like that's the like that to me is like the key thing. It's all to me, it's all fan experience. The actual rugby, it's gonna like the actual rugby is gonna follow, right? You need to introduce people to it, and you're
Yeah.
gonna have people that are coming out to it that are brand new to the game that aren't going to understand the rules. Let's be honest, it's complicated. Although, you know, most sports are complicated if you're just learning them for the first time, anyways. And if you don't believe me on that, go try to explain a sport to somebody that knows nothing about it. It's bizarrely
Yeah.
hard. But if you, I think that's the key thing though. It's like you gotta have everybody's gotta have fun, man. No matter what the scoreboard says, you need the fans to have fun. And like the fans having fun should not rely on whether or not the team wins or loses. And even with that, it shouldn't like obviously too, like you want to play like entertaining brands of rugby, but some teams are going to have to play some of those more I guess some of the more boring styles of rugby in order to win too, right? But ultimately winning is the most fun brand of rugby that you can play. You just can't be boring and stink. Boring and stink is the worst. You can be fun and bad or fun and great, or you can yeah, but you can't be bad and boring. So like that's also kind of a consideration too. But I think it all comes to, like, yeah, the fan experience to me, most important thing. I'm probably rambling on a little bit now, but yeah.
I have to use the washroom quickly,
All
and
right.
I got a question for you guys. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I've never seen MASH either.
Oh man, you couldn't say that while Dan wasn't doing that. Dude, yeah, I don't even know. Oh man. Now that Dan's gone, you're gonna back me up on the you haven't seen MASH, eh?
So Killebrew also mentioned, this was a very interesting number that I found in this video, is that MLR is talking to 9 new ownership teams for 2022. Now, again, that doesn't mean we're going to get 9 new ownership teams in 2022. That just means that there are 9 interested ownership groups that are saying, hey, we're thinking about, answering the bell for joining MLR. So guys, I want to hear from you guys. Who do you think the 9 ownership teams are? And it could be who you think it is, who you want to be. I have my own list, so I'm interested to see where we match up. So Stu, you got to go first last time. So Derek, why don't you go first?
Well, realistically, so we kind of know that I think we kind of know that like Chicago is kind of one of those teams that is in the running a little bit already. So let's assume that they're one of them. I think beyond that, like I don't know, like if like the Ohio Aviators kind of reigniting for the Tens, if that's maybe that's a fun indication that they're looking to get that franchise back up and running. Miami has been a city that was also linked to an MLR team with the former owner of RCT Toulon as well. So and now they're up and running with the 10 series too. They have the Miami Suns are in the 10 series. So maybe there's the tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. It's like, man, hey, maybe there's something there.
I love it.
Ultimately, though, I think Chicago has to be one. You need Chicago. I still say that. We've been saying that for a while. I think, man, I go the same thing that we talked about the last time that we did this, to be honest with you. I'm just going with if in a perfect world, if you would be like, where do you put the next, let's say 3 MLR teams or whatever to get the league up to 16? I'm saying Chicago, Philadelphia, and San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, the whole Bay Area there, as the next 3 biggest media markets that the MLR doesn't have a team in. And then beyond that, you got Tampa Bay, Phoenix, Detroit, Minneapolis. I already mentioned Miami, Orlando, Cleveland, which would be the Ohio Aviators can kind of claim that area maybe. Sacramento, St. Louis, Portland, Charlotte, Pittsburgh. I'm just going through the biggest media markets now that don't have it.
Derek
That's all
didn't
I want.
actually do his homework, so I'm giving him an F. Stu, I'm moving to you. Who did you pick? And I hope you did a little bit better job than Derek did.
I'm just saying I just think that's the places you should target, man. Go after the biggest media markets.
So give me 9. I asked you for 9 teams. So
I did give you 9. I just kept rifling off the next biggest media markets they don't have teams in.
Yeah. I've kind of gone down the similar route because the question was
name
who you think are the cities, not where do you want them to be. But I've mixed mine up a bit, so they're not all going to be in the United States. So bit of variety. I will agree that Chicago, if one of these 9 teams will be a team by 2022, like we've discussed it before, it's the money's on Chicago coming through with an MLR team that year. But I said that the other place I've gone down a similar route. I've said Philadelphia, Minneapolis, San Francisco Bay, Phoenix. I've then made a difference for Miami. I've said Tampa instead.
Okay.
Just because it has
all right, a team in Florida
media audience.
Yeah, a team in Florida. That's fine.
Yeah. But
so we'll put them in Jacksonville.
Okay, so those are my 6 from the US, and then in Canada, I've said Vancouver. I think we all know that we're waiting for a Vancouver team to be announced, and the Arrows to have a Canadian rival in MLR. I'm also going to say Montreal. I think a Montreal-based team or a team in Quebec, if I'm going to be even broader, would be a fantastic addition. Again, it is Canada's second largest media market after Toronto and ahead of Vancouver. So if we are going down the media market route, then I'd say that. I also think appealing to a French-speaking audience would be beneficial to any of our listeners who are watching across the Atlantic in the land of the top 14 as well. And then I've gone on a bit of a wild card because I've chosen a city that does fall under Rugby America's North, but isn't in the United States or Canada. And it would probably have its local games either with San Diego or the Texan teams, because this city is Mexico City.
Okay. And what's funny, I saw there's some banter online talking about if SLAR would implement, kind of creep up north and take Mexico, or is MLR going to take that route? So it's almost kind of like a I see Mexico, especially if they continue with their sevens program, and I know they're very active in the tens tournaments down in the Caribbean. It might be a future battleground for SLAR and MLR to duke it out and see which way it goes. Do they stick with their Latin American brethren, or do they kind of go for the big fish of the United States? It's interesting, that's for sure.
It'd be interesting. Like it is also kind of, I guess, in a weird, interesting way too. Like none of the other major North American leagues have a team in Mexico either. So I don't know. I'm not like I don't know if that's a place where I feel like that's going to be one of those things. It's like if that were to eventually happen, the league's going to like grow a lot more, and maybe Mexico might end up having to get a little bit better at rugby too. But maybe that door opens with the the CRC. Or not the CRC, excuse me, Mexico and the CRC. That would be fun. The ARC would maybe with the ARC now kind of opening the door for promotion relegation. Maybe that can open the door for them a little bit. But I feel like honestly, I feel like any team in a different country, in like a country outside of the United States and Canada, is a long ways down the road. But
I mean, the argument could be made is that it's a smaller sport, so why not? Because the costs aren't as high, and you don't need 100,000 seater stadium like you would. There were talks about the NFL and stuff like that. So, yeah, it would be interesting. I like where your head's at, Stu.
Yeah. Well, on the subject of like the NFL, they have done like the same way they do like the London series of games in my homeland. They also have done the games in Mexico as well. And there was rumors of the champions of MLR and SLAR playing a like
Exhibition.
Champions of Champions game in Mexico. So
Yeah.
maybe.
I'm not saying it's not possible. I think right now, though, too, the other thing, like until the MLR gets the visa thing figured out, because it's like even now, like Canadian players have a hard time playing on American teams and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
How do you show that you're the top of your
yeah, exactly. You're going
top
to
of your
add a
sport?
third country to that. That could be tough.
Or even just
It
like
could
how
be
do you
tougher.
show that you're the top of your sport in your country? For
It's a
Mexico,
cap.
that
It's a cap.
it's a cap.
It's
But
a
like,
cap, right? But
you
so
know,
that would be your players and stuff. But it's also like, is it going to be hard for them to get American players? Is like, how's that going to work? Like, yeah, because we've already seen a lot of the visa issues and stuff, and I'm not sure if like at this point in time, said I was like, I don't know. I'm not saying never or anything, but it's just like that would be, I think adding a third country to a league that already has visa issues. With the two countries, like even like Jason Higgins is on Toronto partly because Rooney couldn't get him a visa, so he went to Toronto, right? So, it's a league that already has visa issues, and I'm not sure adding a third team right now, like with the context of the question being like Killebrew talking about 2022, I don't feel like adding a team in Mexico would be like beneficial for the league at this point in time, but the future would be a different conversation.
Yeah.
I think.
So I also had Miami, Chicago, Ohio. I didn't look at the ratings or the population sizes. So I had Pittsburgh instead of
homework.
I said Pittsburgh over over Philadelphia. I mean, I don't really know the difference in sizing. I also had Montreal. I also had Vancouver. The three teams that I had that you guys didn't have, Hawaii.
No, that's not happening. Come on, we know that's not.
No, we know they're not. They're still in discussion. We're not saying they're joining the league. It's just that they are in talks with MLR. They're still in discussion with them.
Maybe a different ownership group could do a Hawaii team. Maybe there's a lot of logistical
I still
issues
find it
there,
hard
but
that like after what happened with Super Rugby, maybe they circled back and kissed a few boots and said, "I'm sorry."
People are quitting now. Like Kilgore quit and stuff, right? So it's like the organization as a whole is falling apart. It's not.
Yeah, but they haven't stopped. They haven't shut down yet. So like you can't say that they're not trying because one guy left. Right? Like we don't know. We don't know. But like
I think Mexico City has a better shot. I'll put it that way.
To joining the league, yes, but not to having discussions. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, they were like, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be Hawaii. I don't think it's going to be Hawaii.
I don't think
at the very least it'll be a different.
But that's not what we're talking about.
At the very least, also Hawaii's not a city. But continue there.
Fine. You got me there, Derek. Neither is Ohio. So
I said Cleveland. I said Cleveland.
No, but I said Ohio. So you're going to drag me over the coals for that one?
Yeah, I am actually.
I also said Portland. I think
we've seen that one. I mentioned that one. That was one of the bigger media groups.
I think that's a sports fan base that shows that they're rabid for sports, especially with their soccer. So I think that's a nice get that little Cascadia rivalry with Seattle, and then if we can get Vancouver in, it would just be so much fun to watch.
Yeah,
especially
all they really have there too would be the Portland Timbers in the MLS,
Timbers,
and then the Trailblazers in the NBA, and then I guess college football and all the college sports associated with Oregon and everything. But
so I think that could be a good fun little mix up there. And my last team is Las Vegas.
I'll give you that one.
Yeah, they have a few stadia available already, as we know.
Yeah, I mean we saw that they've got the stadium. They didn't have the fans, but they had the stadium.
Yeah,
so
halfway there.
They're halfway there.
I wonder if.
And it's not like there's no money in Vegas. Like there's tons of money in Vegas.
I wonder if we'll actually find out what the 9 cities are. If they'll actually like release that and stuff. But that'd be interesting.
The thing is like
I don't think they will, but that'd be interesting if they did.
But it is very exciting to hear that 9 ownership teams are looking to add capital into the league and have, again, their teams and ownership might not have the funding like we've kind of found out with Hawaii or even just the systems and sponsors and arenas and literally anything.
Mhm.
But it is exciting to hear all this interest in MLR. Okay, guys. So another little tournament happened and started today. The World 10 series started this morning in Bermuda, and it started off quite rocky. The SX10 team had to bow out due to a positive case in their team. And unfortunately, even though it was one person due to Bermuda's strict COVID laws, they all had to isolate together. And that meant that they couldn't play rugby, which was quite disappointing. And even the timing for the event was pushed back a day because of a hurricane. So very, very strange starting to this. And I didn't even get into like Phoenix Rugby's whole situation with their team and how they had a bunch of players not being able to play. But what have you guys thought about for the first round so far? Because it was quite an interesting little experiment, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I watched a little bit of it today. Been kind of busy with attempting to move during this crazy climate of a world that we live in. So unfortunately, I didn't really get the biggest chance to watch as much rugby as I would have liked this week. Which is also a weird side note on I tried to watch the Premiership final, the Exeter versus Wasps, and I turned it on like this earlier today at like noon to like sit down and watch it. And Sportsnet's on demand thing cut it off at 1 o'clock because that means it's been up for 24 hours now. So I only got to watch like the first like 50 minutes of the game before it literally was just like mid video cut off the website. So that's I didn't realize Sportsnet did it like that literally. So that's kind of annoying. But hopefully I can find the remaining half an hour at some point later. Um, but I thought honestly, for the tens though, because I didn't watch that game, it allowed me to watch some more tens or find the time to watch more tens, anyways. And honestly, it's pretty fun, man. I don't know if it's just like I miss North American players playing rugby, but it was like, yeah, it was like it's that really. I think obviously with tens, it's like it's halfway ish between sevens and 15s or whatever, and it's got that weird like the forwards are still kind of grinding it out. There's still a lot of like the hard rucks, the scrums are still there with the five guys, but it's kind of also has that open space that you're kind of accustomed to in sevens. With that, it has that pace and that creativity of the players. So I think ultimately it was a lot of fun. I thought the one super interesting thing with seeing it was the conversion rules, where you get the spots being like the one, what is it, 1, 2, 3, and 5, depending on where you kick from. I thought that was super interesting. And I mean, also with like being able to change on the fly, which is also kind of a very interesting thing, or being able to change as many times as you want. Um, it was like I thought that was an interesting one, and it's like kind of looking at this, and I'm like, we saw SEMA hit a massive 5-point conversion for Ohio. We saw Carl Mayer hit a 5-point conversion for the Rhinos, and I'm kind of like wondering if it's like I don't know, like if the strategy of this league, like kind of going further, it's like I don't know, like I feel like I would try a five. I feel like if I'm a coach, I would try a 5-point all the time, unless I only needed 1 point to win the game. I feel like I would just be like, just have a guy, especially if you can bring him on whenever, just have a guy that just has a massive boot. Like, like Leader is filming all these videos of like doing drop goals with footballs from like 60 meters out for with the Free Jacks camp there. So like, why not have a guy like that just on the roster to just come out and hit like monster conversions for you? Or whatever. It kind of seems like I wonder if that would be like a genuine like strategy thing going for, because
Well,
SEMA
and
only came on.
they
SEMA
talked
only
about
came
with the
on for
rolling
3 seconds.
subs.
Yeah, SEMA
Yeah.
came on for 3 seconds to hit that or whatever, and I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe that's a thing, man. Go with. I wonder if that would open up like a specialized guy to just be like hit 5, because it's like realistically, if you hit a 5-point conversion, it's like you just scored 2 tries. Like that's kind of, I guess that's really what it is, right? So it's like I feel like, because even when the Rhinos score, like when Ollie Knott scored their try, so shout out to some of the Canadians down there. But when Ollie Knott scored the Rhinos try to put them ahead, and then Mayer hit a 5-point conversion, it was like, oh, this game's over now. Like there's a 12-point lead or 11-point lead or whatever it was, right? So it's interesting. I do kind of like it. I'm interesting to kind of watch a lot more of it. I know we're recording this on Sunday, so the rest of the tournament or the first rounds tomorrow, and then obviously the couple weekends be going beyond this. So I'm curious to really kind of get the chance to sort of sit down and really dive into the game and check out how kind of coaches are handling the strategies and stuff. But I think it was a lot of fun from the couple of games that I did watch earlier today.
So I arrived late to watching it because I got my times mixed up. And so the first thing I saw was a 1-point conversion and say like, oh, for the first time today, we see player going for the 1 point. And I was like, oh, look, they've changed the conversion scoring. Oh, that's an interesting approach, because I know they'd changed the penalty kicks are now 2 points instead of 3. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, it's a continue. And then after watching for a bit, I was like, wait, how was that conversion 1, but this conversion is 5? Or what are you talking? Obviously, I then clocked on to the fact that I missed important information. So I caught up on the rules. Got distracted by the Aviators stunning kit, which is
London has wonderful. Good kit too. London's kit's just like, I think there's a lot of teams at this tournament that just have like crazy designs, which I also love. But like London's is just clean.
It's just
clean, good.
But it's English, right? That's
what I expect from London. Yeah. It's just clean and classy, and I love it. But yeah,
for some reason I don't want to call them the Royals. I want to call them the lads, English lads, just because it looks like a bunch of lads running around.
See, man, we have. This is why we don't name teams. We've discussed this.
These look like a bunch of lads.
Things. We don't name teams. That's why.
And the women's team, the lasses. But yeah, as in, so that conversion gambit rule is interesting. I'm not entirely sure, but because that's the thing. If you can have like rolling players and you can have your kicker come on for like the second before your teammate like pins the ball down in the corner or anywhere, it doesn't matter, and you have like a monster boot on you that can hit those 5-point conversions all the time, it may make it redundant. But
that's what I guess that was my whole thing. It's like, why wouldn't you just try it though? Like if you just scored a try, like I feel like the 2, 3 or the 1s is just kind of like, oh, that's all we need to win this game in like the last couple of minutes. But I feel like beyond that, I'd just be like, just try the 5.
That's
like,
right. Yeah,
because I think the worst case scenario is you try that 2 or the 1 and you miss, and you'd be like, well, you might as well just try the 5 then if you're going to miss anyways.
I think what will happen, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll happen like this tournament or this weekend or whenever, is that eventually one player, they'll do something like this. They'll quickly sub off a player to have like their monster kicker come on, and then they'll just blast the fight, and they'll just basically exploit the rules to the point where it's like, either we change the rolling sub rule or we change the conversion rule.
Yeah, full NFL style, just to have a kicker, just a guy that kicks conversions, or whatever. Because you have there are guys that can kick a ball like a mile, so you might as well.
Yeah, like Robbie Povey as well. He's been showing some of his kicking videos. He's been punting that ball pretty hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I caught the first couple rounds this morning, and I was playing with my daughter, and we watched a little bit, and she very much enjoyed what she calls a rug ball. So it was fun. Yeah, like you can definitely tell some of the teams had a little bit of a identity crisis when it came to whether they were trying to figure out if they were going to play this as a 15s game or a 7s game. I think that was probably the Aviators' problem in some of their games, is that they weren't really kind of making a decision one way or the other which style they're going to play. Like the Royals, I felt played a very much a 7 style, where everything else was kind of just arbitrary. We're going to play this like it's a 7s match. And so it was interesting. It was fun to watch. There definitely were some slip ups. Ball handling was semi-optional to some of the guys, and it's bloody hot down there. Like they're saying is around 30 degrees Celsius, and like it's a different type of hot than what we ever deal with in Canada. I can I can only imagine how they're dealing with it. So, and then again, like this is some of the like the this is everyone's first touch of rugby and
Oh wow.
feels like forever. So I feel like that'll come. Um, I myself am confused about what the future of this tournament, and we're going to talk about that later on. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I wish they cleaned up the rucks a little bit. There's some times where I was watching where I'm like, the player safety part of this is a little questionable. And the announcers are kind of like talking up the refs, and I'm like, if we can have this cleaned up a little bit, like sevens, it never looks this like as aggressive and dangerous as this. So I feel like maybe that's just one thing that like post tournament the refs get together and say, okay, let's see what we can do about cleaning this up a little bit. That would be my only real like gripe, and that's just from a player safety side of it. So my second question about the World Tens, guys, is there been anyone individually that's impressed you so far from what you've watched?
For me, and anyone who's been a fan of sevens or England sevens, knows exactly how good Dan Norton is. And he now goes down in history as being the first player to score a try in the World 10 series. Um, but and obviously he's a sevens legend, and obviously you were saying that he and the London lads were playing a seven style of game, and I remember. I think it was like the game against the Miami Sun. One player was running along, stopped, and turned around to offload his ball, which is a very sevens move. I don't think you'd get away with that in 15s. I think you'd just be like knocked clean over and just have to do the standard tackle procedure. But no, Dan Norton is a player who's played the majority of his career in the sevens. I think he's now joined London Irish, although
It's just a short-term deal, but yeah, it was.
Yeah. But he is a lightning fast winger or fullback. I'm sure he can move around whichever position he get. But he also, not only does he know how to play sevens, he also knows how not to be tackled, which is obviously a great thing when you've got a bit more room to move around on the pitch than you have, say, like 15s. Because I think that all the sevens boys did well that were picked for whichever team they were in. And it was the guys that are mainly doing 15 struggled a bit more. Like they, as you said, this is the first time they've been playing rugby in a few months, to say the least.
Yeah, there's some guys that looked at like a tad less in shape than we would have seen them last in MLR.
Yeah.
Like poor Paddy Ryan, got hurt in his game, but we've definitely seen him in better shape when he was playing for MLR. So yeah, I agree with you that there were some 15s, and I don't even think that it was the forwards per se that looked like they were exposed. Like I think that there were some like forward players from I think Rhinos Rugby and the Aviators especially both had very aggressive forward packs. I don't think that they were too bad, but there were definitely others that were very much exposed.
Yeah, and and I think it's also just a factor of playing styles as much as how you played as well. So obviously, I'm assuming these guys have done a bit of practice with one another, but obviously, being in a game environment is completely different to the practice field. And some of these things that you're so used to having, saying that, okay, I've got 8 guys in the scrum, 2 wingers, 2 centers, a fullback, then the scrum half and fly half. And you're used to, especially when it comes to a defensive effort, having up to like 15 guys in a line. And now 5 of those guys are missing. And if you're used to having 15s, you now realize, oh, there's a gap that needs to be filled. This player needs to go over there. Whilst if you're a sevens guy, you're like, great, we've got 3 more guys on our field. So, we've got more help at hand, because anytime they can find a space, they'll know how to like avoid being tackled, as Dan Norton has quite clearly shown, and get over the try line. And maybe, if the conversion is missed, it's fine. You've already got 5 points, but I think the sevens guys are doing well. Obviously, I'm going to assume by next weekend, obviously with a weekend of games under their belts, the 15s guys will be able to tackle the sevens guys more effectively, and maybe there won't be a complete I don't want to say whitewash because we're only halfway through this weekend, these 2 days round of games. So yeah, I think that they'll improve with time, and looking forward to tomorrow, and definitely looking forward to next weekend.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the interesting things about tens though is like I'm excited to see how guys adapt and like what the interesting strategies get figured out. You guys are talking about players maybe not being in the best shape, and maybe part of that is COVID. But like, I wonder how coaches can use that, like the unlimited subs, to their advantage to kind of negate that, right? Because it's like, I mean, hockey's kind of the king of unlimited subs in sports, right? So I wonder if you kind of even utilize that, like be like like the idea in hockey, you go up is kind of like you never want to have a shift that's more than 45 seconds. You kind of go up the ice once, up the ice back, and then get off at your best opportunity. And it's like maybe that's a thing that they kind of go with. And it's like, it's like you go up the pitch once, come up the pitch back. And I mean, that's probably going to take a lot more than 45 seconds, but like maybe that's a thing. It's like, hey, bring on the fresh guys now after, a couple quick runs up the field, keep everybody fresh, go back on. Who knows? Maybe that's something that'll work. I think, like I said, like the interesting strategy with the conversion kicks, I think is interesting too. And, what kind of style of game you're going to play. So I think like I think that's kind of been like from what I was watching, I was just kind of like the coaching of it and seeing how the guys choose to utilize their players has been fun. For a specific player, I thought Aaron Matthews looked really good for Rhino Rugby. I was super like, because I mean, I've been like watching the draft and I'm like, man, like Seattle has a player in this kid now, man. Like that was he had the one of the Rhinos games that I did watch. He had there's like a little turnover and Mikey Teo kind of pops the ball to him, and it's just the absolute cleanest, most accurate grubber kick you could possibly have. And Carl Mayer just kind of runs onto it and finishes up the try. But the best part was when they showed the I guess the reverse angle from inside the try zone, and Matthews kicks it and starts celebrating before Mayer even grabs the ball. And I love the attitude there. I love the confidence to pull that play off. And I mean, it's like, yeah, dude, Seattle. Wow, that guy looks like a hell of a player, man. Very excited to see what he does in MLR next year, but in the near future, excited to see what he does in the rest of this tournament too. But that was the one guy that really caught my eye in the handful of games that I watched.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Derek. Aaron Matthews was a revelation for me with this tournament. I think that's what this one of the great things this little tournament's going to do is show us some players that might be underappreciated and really highlight them. Yeah, I think that his versatility really
Yeah.
shone as well. And he was all over the place. I saw him, play the 9 position, play the 10, and then be second receiver. So he was all over the pitch and he was really fun. Nick Boyer had a really good game against the Phoenix Rugby, and it's fun. He's just a fun player to watch, whether he was with San Diego or Glendale or Colorado. Last year. He's just a fun player to watch, and he had amazing hair. So he was. I enjoyed watching.
That was
him
the one
play
play because he had that one try where he picks the ball out of the back of the scrum
and just
runs the whole way. And I was like watching that. I'm like, oh, that's interesting because there's no loose forwards to stop that.
Yeah,
there's no flanker to come off and stop that. The second row guys obviously have their heads down, and then I guess that scrum half kind of read that play wrong and was nowhere near Boyer on that side of the scrum. But aside from that, it was like, oh, like there's no loose forward. There's no flankers. There's no 8-man to poke their head up and be like, where's this guy going to run and maybe try to break off and stop that. It's just he just down the side and then makes a couple of nice moves. And that was a great try for the Miami Sun. DTH also had a try there too. for that club. So nice to
For
see
sure.
him back scoring some tries, making Canada proud still.
So, guys, unofficially, the World Tens has kind of had this unofficial relationship with Major League Rugby. Um, they took a lot of their teams, like the Ohio Aviators, is made almost up of all MLR players, and each kind of team has a little bit of speckling here and there. Um, and even during this tens, we even saw one of the players playing the tournament, Josh Larson, re-sign with New England Free Jacks. So good to see that he got signed back again, and we can get to watch him again. Hopefully, we'll be able to see him live this year. Um, but what I want to ask you guys is, how can World Tens and MLR kind of work together to be successful? Because there's been conversations that talk about how we've talked about how we've wanted to see maybe like a 7 circuit where MLR teams put teams in. But could this possibly be a way where MLR and this World 10 series join together unofficially, officially, and both the league and the tournament could benefit? Because this seems like a way that you could fill the pockets and the calendars of MLR players.
Yeah, like I think it kind of depends on how World Tens wants to proceed in the future. Like if they want to kind of go that sevens route and have like a full season, that might make it really difficult. I think a tournament like this in where it is right now, obviously also being in Bermuda, let's like I'm going to completely ignore COVID in like this discussion of this idea as well. But it's like I think the best way for like if you wanted to have something where the MLR and the World 10 series could kind of coexist like it has in this tournament where you have MLR players going to
Well, this is
the Bermuda
considered
Tens.
round one, right? So like
Yeah.
they plan on doing more, and like they've talked about how the SX10,
Well, they're all gonna like right now they're all in Bermuda though, right?
yeah.
Like during what is it, a 3 weeks stretch here. Um so but like I think like going like so if you only play for 3 weeks, that might be easier. But I mean if you did like a World Sevens kind of idea where it's like you're playing like for months on end. But I think the best way for it to work, if you're gonna have that MLR presence and you have MLR players going, I think the best way for it to work is they just have to do it in the MLR off season. Because clearly, as we have learned right now, it's not like their contracts don't prevent them from going. So like we clearly have learned that. And obviously they're playing for club teams, not like that's national teams, right? So it's like clearly they're not being the MLR is not preventing them from going. So I think, but like I feel like if you had overlap where it was like this was during the season, that would create a conflict. But I think like if you were to go right now, the way it is right now, I think that would be the thing that you'd have to do. It's just it'd be another rugby tournament that happens in the MLR off season, and then the players can go. If it's short enough that it's not going to conflict with any official MLR things.
Or even yeah, and like you look at like some of the players that are at this. I mean, like Mikey Teau
There's
and
big names.
Josh Larson. There are big names, but like
ETH Vandermerver.
but what I'm saying is like if they did it in the MLR off season when there are test matches happening, it's not like they're being absolutely gutted.
No,
Like
no,
you can
exactly.
still
But
have
you obviously won't have the test match guys going to
no,
this
but you still
tournament.
have there still are enough MLR stars that could take part in this, and sevens guys, and like there might be a few after the Olympics, a few sevens guys that are like, I'm kind of done the whole seventh circuit, but maybe I want to take a shot at
Yeah.
this. There are possibilities.
Yeah, I think it'll just come down to what kind of format World Tens, if this is successful, World Tens wants to do going forward. And I think if you wanted the MLR players there, you probably just have to make sure it doesn't conflict with the MLR season in any way. And that could, I don't see why that couldn't happen. It's happening right now. This is obviously a super bizarre year. So maybe in another year, maybe the MLR wouldn't be as willing to let them go. Who knows? But I don't see why they wouldn't because it's just their players playing more. Um, but and making more money playing professional rugby, right? Guys, obviously MLR players have gone back to the Mitre 10 Cup in the offseason and then come back too, right? So the
Mhm.
MLR hasn't been preventing players from playing rugby in other competitions. But you just can't play in a competition that conflicts with the MLR directly. So avoid that, and they're probably okay.
Well, I've got some bad news for you boys because I went on the tournament website and they state the Tens World Series will continue to wow spectators in 2021, with 16 teams set to compete in 12 tournaments across the world.
What are the 12 okay, so I know what Bermuda is doing right now is over 3 weeks, but would that be under like next year with what they're saying? Would that be 3 tournaments that they're just doing
this
in
is
the
all
same
they've
city?
given. So they haven't given
no.
a breakdown of where these tournaments
Obviously,
will be,
yeah.
or if they'll be back to back in certain locations. Like even the Sevens World Series
Yeah.
normally has anywhere from like a week to a month or a
But
couple of months between
the Sevens World
fixtures.
Series, the Sevens World Series tournaments are one weekend though, right? So that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, is this because this obviously like tomorrow they're not declaring like a winner of round one or something. Like there's no final. So it's like, is a tournament going to be 3 weeks long, or is a tournament going to be one weekend? So it's like, are we talking about a 12-week season, or are we talking about a 36-week season? Like, how does that?
It doesn't say. I'm looking at the same thing he's looking at.
Yeah.
It's literally a one sentence line of saying 16 teams, which is double the original.
If you did, again though, depending on the time of the year, right? Like if you did 12 weeks and say you did that back to back, that's 3 months. So you could, in theory, do that during the MLR off season.
One thing I can kind of compare it to is the current captain of the Ospreys, Justin Tipperick, in 2018 was given the opportunity to go to the Gold Coast for the Commonwealth Games to compete with Wales for their Sevens competition. And admittedly, at the time, he wasn't the Ospreys captain, but he was a prominent member of the Wales squad, and one of the first 15 that would be picked for national 15s duty. But he did have experience in the Sevens and said that if the opportunity presented itself, he wanted to take part. Didn't win a medal, so I don't know if Wales were like thinking that they could. But the opportunity presents itself. So it may be a case of, say, members from MLR teams that say come back from injury and need
warm up.
A warm up.
Yeah, the conditioning stints happen a lot in baseball and hockey. Yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see how this works out. Hopefully,
it's possible. I just
honestly, up until today, up until today, I didn't even know if it was actually going to happen or not. I thought it was all fairy tale and fun until I actually saw rugby happen. So
watching the games, it's fun. I'm going to definitely watch the rest of the tournament because it was a lot of fun. So moving on, and hopefully it keeps growing, and maybe it'll develop into something really cool in the future.
So guys, to finish up, we've got a little bit of America's news, and then we'll finish off with something that'll probably make Stu upset. But we're going to start with
everything that we say, I think.
Yeah, probably. The South America Four Nations has kind of taken part in the last week and a half and has some very interesting outcomes. And if you guys want to get a little Spark Notes about it, check out Hardline Rugby. That is Stu's little brainchild, and he has done some fantastic recaps of all the rounds and all the matches. So if you need a catching up like I did, that's where you should go. But gentlemen, there's been some games that, like I said, have had interesting outcomes. Which games kind of have raised your eyebrows the most?
So Chile's pretty good, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who thought that building a high performance center and getting a new coach in would, turn their fortunes around?
Yeah, no clue. Yeah,
we built a high performance center and we got a new coach. Where's our results? Where are our wins?
Well, we weren't even invited to this tournament. Yeah.
Canada's undefeated in 2020.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure COVID's tossed us a few losses.
Yeah, okay.
I'm pretty sure Rugby Canada's gotten a few losses from COVID.
Yeah. They haven't lost a rugby game, though.
All right, fair.
All right. I'm going to agree. Like, Chile have done fantastically well. So for those of you that I'll just give the quick notes. They've beaten Brazil on Wednesday of this week. last week from when this podcast was released. They beat Uruguay, and the previous Saturday, very almost beat Argentina. And I think that is the game that raised the eyebrows the most. Obviously, you can say things like, "Oh, it's the first game that Argentina have played since the World Cup," and therefore, and also, it's not all the guys that went to the World Cup. This is the Argentina 15, so not all the first 15 for Argentina aren't playing, so it's not the same. Chile led that game for the majority of it. For over the 80 minutes, they led for 60 minutes and very nearly won the game. If they hadn't committed a penalty 40 meters in front of the posts, and Argentina didn't have a kicker that would have nailed that, no problem, Chile would have been lifting the trophy this weekend instead of Argentina. This is a team that has declared that they want to be in the conversation when it comes to 2023, when it comes to the Americas qualification opportunities, because for all World Cups, it's normally been between Canada and the USA of who gets America's 1 and who gets America's 2. And then Uruguay are told to pick up the scraps in the repechage tournaments, with the exception being of 2018. But let's not go into that. But Chile have definitely made the intent known of like, we want to qualify. We want to be playing at the big boys table. And we're tired of just being ignored. And they've clearly made an investment with this development center and with this new coaching structure. And it's paying off. It's especially paying off when the other team just like nods their head and go like, yeah, sure, mate. We'll see you in 4 years, Chile, for the next tournament. No, if Canada and the USA don't pay attention the same way that Argentina didn't in their first game, they're going to be exposed. And that's got me worried about Canada, because if they don't pull their finger out and get their entire thing in order by the 2021 ARC, Chile are going to show them up, and who knows, maybe Chile may even jump them to be one of the America's choices for the next Rugby World Cup.
Yeah, I think the big story coming out of this tournament was Chile. I think I saw earlier today that try that Jose Lorena scored for Chile, which was on the backs of Rodrigo Fernandez, kind of just starting a counterattack, receiving the kick and just slicing his way through the Brazilian defense. Couple offloads later, a little nice bounce off a kneecap to put the ball over the try line. But it was kind of like, that was a class try, man. Like, it's watching them, it's like it was like, wow, like these guys have improved immensely over the last year, which was kind of like, I'm kind of like, I don't know if it's just because it's like, oh wow, like, like nobody's been able to play rugby this year, right? So it's like to see that improvement in such a bizarre year, it was surprising. I think the big thing for me, it's like, if you are going to kind of go with the hit the panic button and stuff, like I still think, in all honesty, like as much as we maybe criticize Canada sometimes, I think like Canada is certainly capable of beating the United States, Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina 15, and Chile. There's no like they're certainly capable of doing it. It's just a matter of if they can put it together to actually do it. The difference now, though, after watching Chile, is like, the last time Canada played Chile in the 2019 ARC, it was 56-0. Lloyd had a hat trick. It was just like, it was like a drubbing. It was like there's a clear like level gap, and I feel like, watching Chile in the ARC the last couple of years and against Canada, it's like, I was always just like, no matter what happens in the ARC, it's like Canada should always get one, and it's going to be Chile. Right, like no matter, like I don't see how Chile can beat Canada. And now watching this, I'm like, oh, Chile can beat Canada or whatever. It has now kind of the thought that it's like they can do it has now kind of creeped into my mind. And that's not to say that Canada can't beat Chile, because Canada can certainly beat Chile. But it's like that's going to be a way tougher game. And it's like I said, man, they beat Brazil, they beat Uruguay. Those are teams that have put away Canada in the past. And this is kind of an interesting tournament in the sense that what were they going with, like 26-man rosters or something?
Yes,
For the
26.
26-man rosters. It wasn't officially capped, so it's a little bit different than a test match and stuff. But it was like the squad that Chile beat in Uruguay was pretty solid, and the Brazilian team that they beat today was pretty good. And they kind of show too. It's like they got looks like they got a really good goal kicker. Which we have seen in a lot of rugby matches that can go a long way, man.
Oh, especially the Canada's last game against Brazil. Josh Reeves,
just killed everyone.
Booted us.
Yeah.
Booted us.
And it was like, take a penalty, sweet 3 points. It's So like I thought, I think that's my only concern though. Is it's like I think this tournament, if we're gonna talk about if you're concerned about Canada or whatever, my only thing is now that I the only way I feel is now I've gone from there's no way Canada should ever lose to Chile to Canada could probably lose to Chile, and then right, like that's the only way that I've that's what my only transition is. Like I can now see a loss happening, whereas before I was like they would never lose to this team, but now I'm like, oh, like this could happen. You don't sleep on Chile anymore, man. They just I hope teams, I hope the United States, I hope Canada is like kind of look at that and be like, yeah, wow, all right, the next ARC is going to be a little bit different.
So the last game Canada played against the US against Uruguay was that heartbreaker where Uruguay scored in the last minute to win, 2019. That lineup had 3 players play in that game against Chile in this Four Nations tournament. So it's definitely a very different lineup
roster,
different roster than what Uruguay's normally used to. So who knows how much chemistry this lineup had?
How many guys were on the Brazil roster?
From when I did not check that. Yeah, that would be interesting as well. So again, very different lineups.
It's
and again,
you can tell they're playing well though. That's the thing.
Oh, for sure. Oh, and like there's been talks. There's talks about guys that showed up that either lost, looked like they had added muscle, and others that just are new players to the program. And that's what a high performance training center does. That gets it finds those players and gets them into the proper shape. So I'm excited to see what Chile can do against a program like Canada. I think the way I'm seeing it, because otherwise my head will explode, is that this is an amazing opportunity for Canada to test where they are. I've been saying this.
Test matches in.
I've been saying this that Canada needs to start playing people in their zone, like in their level of ability. They should be playing more games against Russia and Chile and I say Uruguay, even though Uruguay's probably light years ahead right now, but like that's where they need to go. I think they need to move away from playing the big names, even though those are those who pull them in. Like Ireland and Scotland. What do you prove by getting drubbed by them? I know it's a money thing. You got to play, those teams so that way you can pull fans in. But
the ARC is where they should be.
Exactly. I think games like that will be important for Canada. So I'm excited to see what Chile can do next, because honestly, I don't really want to watch a drubbing match. It's not good TV. It's not good sport. Like it's just I want to see a competitive game. Like say what you will until the World Cup, but most of Canada's games were competitive. It just Canada was never able to either pull away or hold a lead, and so it'll be really interesting to see how these matches turn up in 2021 if the games are played. So the last thing we're going to talk about was a big deal in the rugby world, and I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it. The Barbarians game. And many of you guys would know about this. The Barbarians were set to play England on Saturday, and I guess some of the Barbarians decided that they wanted to go have a little bit of fun on Friday night and broke the COVID isolation restrictions. Also on Wednesday night. I did not know about that.
They went out twice.
So, gentlemen, I'm asking you, in a COVID world where we have asked professional athletes to isolate from their families look at what some of the Super Rugby teams had to do. Like they were isolated from their families for a long time. If we're going to keep this in the rugby sphere, Not even just looking at like the
NHL,
bubbles.
NBA bubbles and stuff too.
Yeah,
Like it's a lot. It's
this
a lot.
isn't like, how long were the Barbarians even together? Like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So I'm as either an English supporter or a Barbarians fanatic, how would you feel if this happened? If this was a Toronto Arrows were set to play, somebody and they did this, how would this make you feel, Derek?
No, I mean, I don't think we have to pretend like put teams in different lights here. I think we can just talk about the specific game. But like, yeah, I think if I'm Eddie Jones, I feel like there's nobody in the world that is more angry than Eddie Jones at this point in time.
I'd be willing to give him a challenge.
Oh, Stu is angrier than Eddie Jones, apparently.
He's got his red shirt on. He's fired up.
But either way, before Stu just yells at San Diego Legion legend Chris Robshaw, I think that's like, I'm most angry if I'm anybody associated with England right now, just because you lose the tune-up game for a little bit of the Six Nations and stuff. I think that's what I'd be most angry about. And now you got, you're going into that match next week, and it's like that's a little bit cold, I guess. But I think, it sucks. I know like the RFU is out a ton of money because they couldn't play the game, so it's like they're probably not happy about it either. I mean, I guess like the fans and stuff, obviously, like you do lose out on a couple cool, like that would have been like Robshaw's last game at Twickenham. Like even though there would be no fans, like there's a lot of like really cool storylines going into this game. And I mean, the Barbarians are obviously one of those teams that's kind of like, it's an invitational side. Partying is a little bit of the lore of that club as well. And kind of the fun banter that happens when those guys get together and go on tours and stuff, and all part of, I guess, the invitational nature of what the Barbarians are. And they're obviously one of the classic club teams in all of rugby, right? So so I think from that point of view, it's just like, it is like you said, it's just kind of like yes, like you couldn't just like Uber,
and
like I don't know, just get some,
you couldn't
beer in
just
the hotel
like go to the
rooms or
hotel
something.
bar,
Yeah,
like
the hotel rooms or wherever you were supposed to go. Right. And it was like, and then obviously like there's videos coming out and stuff that, for like, from the angles of the videos, kind of looks like that person was like sitting with them. So it's like, why are you guys filming any of this?
yeah, why are you letting anyone film? Why are you?
Well, yeah,
there's
but
so
like
many
there's
things.
so many things, but it's like, I think the ultimate thing is, it's just like, I think the worst part is it's like when the list of some of the names that came out, and you see guys like Robshaw or Wigglesworth and like Maitland and stuff. It's like, oh, these are like the veteran like guys that would be like, these would be like the leaders of the team. It's not like these are like, it's not like these were like, oh, like the traditional uncapped guy that's on the Barbarians or something going out, right? It's like, oh, these are like the absolute like legends, like the Saracens players that aren't playing anymore, like they're all out there. And it's like, it's just ultimately, it's just like disappointing. And it's like, why? Like, it's just like, why did you guys, like, I just know, my question is just like, why did you guys do that? I mean, like, it's COVID-19, you're told to stay in a bubble so you can get your like sports game off the ground. Like, it's just do it.
All right, Stu, how are you feeling, buddy? How's it going? What do you want to say? The mic's yours.
When I first heard this story break, and it was just, oh, there's 12 players that are rumored to have gone out, the next thing I saw was that at the top of the list was Chris Robshaw. And I don't think my fury's gone down since. It's offensive what they've done. This is the Barbarians team as an entity is 130 years. It's 130 years of rugby tradition. It's been able to survive going from the amateur era into the professional era. The legends of the game that have been able to put on the Barbarians jersey and play are staggering, including like Richie McCaw. And these guys have thrown it away. And not only that, the opportunity for themselves to play in this jersey, but the opportunity for their teammates who followed the rules, stayed in the hotel, which has a bar. And I don't even care about things like the match fees, which are £1 million, which now the RFU has to reimburse to Sky Sports in the UK, or the international deals to show these games. I don't understand how a player of Robshaw's caliber would think that this was remotely okay. This is a player that captained his team to their worst performance in World Cup history, going out in the pool stage of their own World Cup. And he held himself together with such grace and posture. And people were saying that even when Eddie Jones comes in, this has to be the guy that leads the team forward. Obviously, that didn't happen, and age became a factor. But people respected Robshaw because he earned respect. People would say, like, he's a great player, but he's also a good guy as well. He's one of the guys that you just want to get to know more about. And I haven't even gotten into the fact that this is during a time in which COVID has killed over 44,000 people in the UK. This isn't something that you can just brush off and say, like, oh, I didn't know about it. And I know these guys have posted apologies on social media saying that they've let themselves down and let the teams down. But that doesn't excuse them doing the action in the first place. This was an offensive end to what should have been Robshaw's Grand Slam swan song on the biggest stage in English rugby, and he threw that away. And that is what annoys me the most, because he hasn't just lost my appreciation of him as a player. He's just lost my outright respect. He is tarnished anything he had, because a few weeks ago, people were clapping at home because they couldn't go to the Stoop for his 300th game as a Harlequin. And the other players that should have known better, what's the club that they represent? Saracens. The one club that definitely needs worse press for its players.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
It's infuriating. Now, the only good news that has come out of this is that the RFU has said that those players that are going to be based in England are going to be disciplined because of this, because one of the big laws you can't do in rugby is bring the game into disrepute. They have brought the game into disrepute, and they should be punished for it. Now, not all the players that are playing were supposed to be playing were English or playing in English leagues, but I hope every league of which these players do play in punish them. They get punished. And that's the thing. I'm tripping over my words. That's how angry I am at all of this. But I am furious with Robshaw. And I did make the joke of that if the rumor was true, that Robshaw had been one of these guys to go out, and I now have physical proof because there's a video of him drinking in a pub with these guys, that I was going to buy a Barbarian shirt and wear it to a Legion game. Now, I don't think that he would ever do something as malicious as directly break or get 12 other guys to join him to break these protocols. But if the Legion do come to Toronto next year, I am going to that game in a Barbarians top. He has just lost all my respect, and he is a player. And in the same weekend in which David Pocock, an absolute phenomenal guy, has retired, and I would have originally put them in roughly the same bracket of being phenomenal players and just great people, I now have to scrub Robshaw's name from it. And I know that this will mean absolutely nothing to him, but it means a hell of a lot to me.
I have nothing to add to this. I feel like we should just
I have more questions for this. I like this. But no, really, I have two questions, Stu. And do you think this is how he's going to be remembered? Is this going to be something that when you bring up Chris Robshaw's name 10 years from now, people will be like, oh, fuck, do you remember when the Babas game?
Stu just said he's going to be remembered for being the captain of the England World Cup that they didn't get out of the quarter or out of the play-in round for their the first round, the qualifying round. I'm tripping over my words because now I'm mad for Stu. But yeah, that my joke just got ruined because I couldn't deliver it. But yeah, 2015 World Cup captain England. He's also going to be remembered for that, which Stu pointed out was a bad thing too. I don't know. I'm just trying to help Stu. You want to feel the
Well,
anger.
and I think the thing that
This
pisses me
is-
off the most
I'm
is
not
that
leaving until Stu's green with purple pants right now. So
This is the thing. This is so if you talk to a Quins player or a Quins supporter, they will say that, oh, he's, you know, Quins through and through. He's given 100 caps for this. If you speak to an England fan, you'll say, like, yes, he was in the worst performing England team at the time, but then again, so was Owen Farrell, and he's obviously not treated in the same regard.
I think Stu just likes
although his
bringing this up
shoulder-
because he's Welsh.
maybe that. But this is a big black mark against his name, because this is something that, you know, this game would have been happening in, I don't know, May or June of this year if it hadn't been for COVID. And maybe Robshaw would have been playing in that game then. But it wasn't a ridiculous thing to ask. It wasn't, oh, we're going to send you to the other side of the world for like 4 months and you can't even communicate with anyone. It was just stay in the hotel for 2 weeks.
Yeah, the standard was so low. And one thing that I saw as well that I thought it was a good point is that, you know, you talked about how some of his teammates were going to be able to play this game. I think about the other side of the pitch, that there was possibly players that were looking to make their mark for England leading into, you know, their final Six Nations game, and then also, you know, the new autumn test match series that they're going to be part of. You know, like there were guys on in England that were looking to make that their mark on this legendary game against the Barbarians. You know, COVID, you know, bringing you know, joy to rugby fans in the UK and beyond, and then the other team goes out and parties, and so that opportunity is taken away from you. And you know, I don't think that England put out a lineup sheet yet, so we don't know.
Even bothered.
So we don't know who would have been on in the lineup, but it could have been guys that, you know, could have gotten their first taste for England. I don't know how young, if there were any young guys in the
there's a lot
training camp.
There's a lot. Eddie took a lot. Yeah.
So that's the thing, right? So there's guys that probably could have won their way into their first test match in the Six Nations game, or who knows what could have happened. So it's tough. It sucks. You know, we don't need any more ball kicking here. You know, we've been kicked enough in the balls during COVID with being just.
I think
we don't need this. Chris Robshaw and other barbarian jerks.
I think the one thing, though, that it kind of goes to show is we're kind of like the NHL bubble worked out pretty well. The NBA bubble worked out pretty well. The NFLs have had their issues. I guess they're still playing games and stuff. MLB had their issues. We see this, and it's like, I think it's like the ultimate thing is like none of these bubble scenarios or anything that the players have to do to keep this, like, it doesn't work without the players actually buying into it themselves.
For sure.
And I think that's what we ultimately kind of saw with the Barbarians here. And I mean, we know that, you know, going forward, it'll probably be a discussion amongst MLR fans until March, when the 2021 season happens, whether you go with a bubble or whether you go with, like, you know, traveling and everything. But I think ultimately it doesn't matter if the players themselves don't buy in, which I think is what we saw with the Barbarians here. And I thought the angriest person about it would have been Eddie Jones, because like Dan said, you can't like, you know, give some guys chances in the lineup. You can't really do any, like, you can't do anything. You can't do anything that you want to do. You just lost your tune-up game, right? Now the English players are going in cold to that Six Nations match. So I thought the angriest person in the world was Eddie Jones, but apparently it's Stu Hardy. So
technically Ireland and Italy went in cold to their test match on the weekend, and look how Ireland did. So
I mean, it's true, they did, but it's like that wasn't the plan for England. So it messes up like their plan and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're planning on that, then, like, I memean, sure, but it's, yeah, I think that's the whole thing though, man, is I think you just, I don't know, in a more calm toned voice, I agree with what most of Stu said there. It was just, it's like, I think that was the disappointing thing. It's like, I wasn't disappointed that some players broke like to COVID. It's like you kind of look at it and you're just like, oh, like, it's these legends that did it.
Can you imagine if Sidney Crosby or John Tavares
broke
the bubble? Like, it would have been national hysteria here in Canada. But you know what? We're going to finish up to there, lads. Stu, I feel for you, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Have a good sleep tonight, and hopefully your brain will be wiped of this debacle. If you guys want to follow more of our adventures into the podcasting world in North American rugby, you can find us on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram at Rouge Rugby. We have links to our previous episodes, and on Facebook we have our video versions, and also you can find us on YouTube at Rouge Rugby. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for what ended up being a very fiery episode. And hopefully,
you just got really angry. We were probably calm until you mentioned the Barbarians.
You guys wanted to talk about it, man.
Anyways, I mean, it's true. It's true. It was fun. It was probably the best part of the episode. We shouldn't even release the rest of this.
Enjoy your week, gentlemen, and hopefully next episode we won't be so fiery.